Dunsmuir City Council meeting for March 21st, 2019 at 6 p.m. Can we all, Julie, roll call.
Councilmember Deutsch.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan. Councilmember Geisler.
Here.
Councilmember Barr.
Here.
And Mayor McKee.
Present. We shall now stand for the flag salute. Big Dave, can you start us off?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into item number 4, which is approval of the agenda. I did want to make a suggestion tonight and see if the council was in favor. Item number 9 is announcements and reports from council and staff. We do have a number of new business items that we have to get through today. If the council would be so inclined to move those reports to after our new business so we can get those decisions done first.
Madam Mayor, would you like to move item 9 to?
It would basically 9 would go after 13.
So item 9 is now 14A, and 15 would be adjournment.
Correct.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
All right.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yes. I would like to move item SB1
What do you say? I'm sorry, what do you say?
Item 13D.
with reference to item 13, new business.
Yep. 13D.
13D.
13D, SB1 funding resolution. 13C, live scan authorization resolution. I would move those to the consent agenda. I saw nothing controversial about any of them.
All right, anyone have any issues with moving those 2 resolutions to the consent agenda?
I'd have to concur with that assessment because they were pretty.
Straightforward.
Okay, so I'm going to, Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Mr. Orr, if that's all right with you?
I'm not quite done.
Okay.
I reviewed the check register, and there are 2 items on the check register, pages 4 and 5 of our agenda. One of them is $1,468.05 to Clemens Waste Removal, 3 months past due short. I assume that's contract. The other item is Steve Pierce Handyman Snow Removal Mott, $1,650. I'd like to ask some questions about both of those items.
Okay, so right now, procedurally, do you feel that these would influence you taking this off the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so you'd like to move 10, there's a 10A to new business. Just to ask those, if it's just asking questions, we could keep it there and I'll let you ask the questions at consent, but if there's gonna be some action other than approval.
Well, it mostly relates to expenditures around the airport,
Okay,
and that is part of the treasurer's report, and that is part of Mr. Dingis's presentation, item 6.
okay,
So they're all related.
okay, so move 10A to 13 as a whole. Is there anything else?
Yes. Finally, for those that are sitting in the audience, and those of us that are sitting here on this side of the table, I will simply, and those of you that are going to watch this on TV or whatever medium you watch city council meetings on, I feel very frustrated in trying to get several items on
So again, this is just for the arrangement of the agenda right now.
City council
If you want to talk
agenda.
about that, we'll do it at comment.
These, very fine, I'll save it for comment.
Just because we don't have any information to take action on related to those until we get there.
Very good.
On that note, I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
All right, I'm just going to review the amendments really quick for council. So it's moving item 9 after new business. And
15A.
to 15A, and then on the consent agenda,
No, I mean, that's 14.
14, and then
And then
amended to
15A would be adjourned, okay.
And consent agenda, we're moving 10A to new business. And for 13C and D, we're moving those to the consent agenda.
So we have 13F.
Yep.
Okay. As amended.
All right. Is there a second?
Yes.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the amended agenda as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're moving forward. All right, so we will now go into item number 5, which is approval of the minutes, the regular meeting of March 7th, 2019. Is there any amendments to the minutes?
No, ma'am, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, March 7th, 2019.
As submitted? All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Approval of the minutes as submitted for March 7, 2019. All right, we will now move into item number 6, presentation by Richard Dingus, Airport Industrial Park.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to join just to introduce, since it's part airport, part economic development.
Okay.
That's what I was saying, still coming. You want to keep working it on, we'll start talking. Let it help.
By the way, that's Richard Dinges, for those of you who haven't seen him lately and forgot who he is.
Thank you very much.
It is.
So this presentation is kind of a joint presentation, if you will, from the Airport Committee and the Economic Development Committee. One of the things that people apparently over the years since 1964, when the airport was given over to us by the city, Siskiyou County, when they gave it to us, they gave us actually 2 pieces of property, one piece with 2 parcels within it. And the airport has kind of been there, and it's gone up and down, and there have been problems, and there was this cutoff for 4 years where they decided we just wouldn't let the FAA know what they were up to. And now we came back in 2015, and we've been working since then to get the airport where it's a viable airport. And one of the key elements of the sustainability is to take advantage of the fact that there is about 78 acres up there to the east of the airport that has been sitting there the whole time, prime for development. And it took us a while to get to the point where there was a clear definition that this one set of property we could work on as long as we didn't interfere with the airport itself. And since then, we've been moving along towards an understanding of how we might be able to put in an industrial park there that'll bring in jobs, revenue, and the good news is that we have Richard Dinges, who is not only on the Economic Development Committee and on the Airport Committee, and not only is he the director of the chamber, but he's also an extensive experience in putting in industrial parks just like this. So this is something up his alley. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to him, and he'll give you a sense of how we see this fitting in not only to the sustainability of the airport going forward, but also to the vitality of the city going forward. A whole new area to open up to development that right now is just sitting up there with trees on it.
Lights? Yeah.
Well, as you can see here, when we started with the airport committee, we were looking at how we could make the airport basically self-sustaining. And there's a couple things that we could do. One, there was a lot of property up there. There was a lot of property up there that we could actually utilize, but nobody had ever looked at that before as having it a benefit for Dunsmuir. Right now, we're looking at repaving the runways. And by doing so, I think it's going to bring in a lot of air traffic. Taking a look at this, I can do the next one. As you can see here, it's a ways from Dunsmuir itself. It's all the way up there at the top of the page, which doesn't really, it's not really going to impact Dunsmuir itself as far as traffic, because we feel if we do an industrial park up in that area and it becomes a distribution center, it'll take the freeway all the way to the top to Mott. It'll be all the distributions for the trucks in that area, and then they'll move on and go in both directions. There's approximately 79.8 acres up there. Right now there's a residence up there, and there's also a gun club that's up there that's utilizing the property right now, but the basic rest of the property is not being utilized at all. I think at one time there might have been a dump area up there, which may take a brownfield investigation, we're not sure, but if it does, that's just part of the project. Again, you have to understand too that when we looked at this, We didn't do a due diligence on this yet. That's going to be coming. So what I did basically was just kind of make up a design. We've done this before down south in Southern California and in out towards San Francisco.
If you see there's that dotted line that kind of follows the airport, right, hugs the airport to the east of the airport. That's the separation between the airport itself and then the other 79.8 acres up there is up to the right. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, the airport is 46.2 acres and the land that we're looking at is 79.8 acres. This is the runway in question. This is the one that's going to be repaved. As you can see, the property to the north of that is pretty much underbrush, not many trees up in that area. And the gun club is right there to the left. There is a part-time residence, I think, that is just adjacent to the main hangar that we have near the 14. If you just go up on that little road right there, that's a residence. The dump site, as you can see, was over near that clearing area. And we have a substation that sits right there where that little road goes off to the north or to the east. That's a substation. This was the original design that we looked at. Those walls behind there that you see, those two lines of track there are basically about 20-foot high walls. You can see there's about a 40-foot increase in elevation there. And we would clear those lots and basically make that, those would be terraced walls. There would be, what do I have? 8 buildings there. Those buildings range in size from about 15,000 square feet up to about 25,000 square feet. I did talk to some individuals that do this kind of work and they rent these kind of buildings for this kind of size. They run about 67 cents a square foot. So the 15,000 square foot building right there, if you had it and you rented it, would be about $9,200 a month. So that would be an income that possibly the city could utilize on a monthly basis. You multiply that times 5 of those and you get quite a bit of money. So this was the first original design, and on the right there, if you take a look at that, what I imposed there is basically maybe a green waste area. That would be something that I think we could utilize. We did this when I was in Stinson Beach, and it worked really, really well. We got a grinder, we got a tub grinder, and it was a place where all the communities could come and drop off their green waste. And it eventually ended up having 5 full-time people working there. And basically, the green waste, after it was ground up, it was actually given back to the community. You could go up with a truck and pick it up and use it for fertilizer. So that's one use of that other property to the right there. Okay, this is what Dyer Engineering did for us. This is the lots as they've been created. Again, this is a concept. This doesn't mean it has to be this way, but this is just one version of it. It comes to 5 lots. The lots are between 5 to 7 acres apiece. They're pretty good sized lots there, and for distribution, it's perfect. I didn't bring my sheet, but if you take a look at where the location of this is, I do believe it's 367 miles from Portland, 265 miles from San Francisco, Oakland. I think it's 130 miles from Klamath Falls. Susanville's about an hour and a half away. So if you take a look at the site itself, it's really in a prime location. And I think it's something that would really be utilized for distribution. A person could drive anywhere from 3 to 5 hours to this spot, pick up another trailer and drive home. They could be home that night rather than driving all the way to Portland. So I think it's a real economic boon for the city. I hope it does move forward. Again, it's a concept, so it can change. And there's also a possibility of getting federal funding for all the infrastructure, which would mean that they would put in all the roads and the sewer and the water, which wouldn't impact the city as far as their cost. So I believe there's like $16 billion for that. Of course, we wouldn't use all that, but I'm sure that if we did apply for it, that we would probably get the loan or get the grant. And the grant basically is for small communities, for small rural communities and development. So.
What is unique about this when you look at it compared to the other sites, say in Siskiyou County, and so the airport as it fits into the overall vision of this?
Well, it's one of the few places that we have that's near the freeway, which makes it extremely accessible. The other sites that I've looked at throughout the county are several miles away from the freeway. They have to improve the roads to get to those sites. And here, basically, it's relatively easy. You'd have to improve the roads to take on the heavy trucks. And we did design, on the first design, we actually designed it to have 2 access points, so we didn't disturb the residents that were down on that road. But if it had to be used, it could be used. So that's a real benefit here, that you have the airport here. And it's right, so close to I-5. I have talked, I won't say any more about that, but, so.
But you've been talking to some companies that you think distribution-wise might find this very attractive to support the project.
Does it anyway. Yeah, basically we have, and they are interested. It would depend, when they come up and take a look at the site, they would have to make sure that it's going to be a site that they would really want to use. They have seen this drawing already, and they're interested. So it might be something that in the next year or two could possibly really happen.
Richard?
Yeah.
Madam Mayor. Yeah? All right, I got some questions, bro. I commend you, and I really appreciate the enthusiasm, and man, it's about time somebody seemed to have a fire lit under roses, but I have some concerning questions. It seems to me when I ran for city council, I said, man, a couple things I want to do is get the library open and the airport open. Seems I did both of them just for a minute. Now, a couple of the problems. Money's earned at the airport. Do they go to the city, or do they have to stay with the airport?
They go to the city.
Okay?
The properties are separate.
This is just a question not for you to respond to, but something I want to throw out there. I'm hoping that we're considering solar out there. Just no response necessary, but by God, I hope it. Remember me, I had to get back a $10 million check?
Yeah, I do.
Okay? When you say that these properties are terraced, when you say that terrace, that is because it won't affect aviation?
No, they're terraced because of the wall height.
Because of, excuse me?
Wall height.
And wall height is what?
The way I designed these were about 20 footers. So what you want to do is maybe break them into 10-foot wall heights so they step. And then what you do is you landscape them.
I'm just trying to make it, I'm trying to make it clear to everybody.
Okay.
I'm playing dumps because there's a lot of dumb people like me.
Yeah, these are
that we don't
big
get
area
everything.
lots. Yeah.
And part of the thing was, back in the day, any money that made at the airport had to stay at the airport. So now, that's changed. Money that is, now we've got a hangar, we got a thing, and they're paying rent, that money can come to the city.
Well, you're talking airports and now you're talking distribution. This is an industrial park. The city would get all the money from the industrial
I
park.
think another way of asking this might be, if money made under this industrial park, that doesn't have to be limited to the airport enterprise fund.
No, it does not.
Okay.
It's a separately owned lot, so in fact, currently its costs aren't associated with the airport directly.
That's correct.
It's just a separate asset we own, a lot
It
of
would.
land behind the airport.
But the real asset behind this is the people that would like to put distribution centers here have airplanes.
Yeah.
And so they want to fly here. They want to take a look at their operations and facilities.
Well, that would be quite a benefit.
This makes it so easy. Yes.
This is something that in a few short years could just pull us right up out of the hole.
About $1 million a year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Peter, do you have any questions?
I have two. Hopefully tonight we'll get to the city's budget committee, the finances of the city. We have a city treasurer's report in our agenda that shows the airport fund with a negative figure. And my assumption, to the finance director, is for every dollar shortfall in the airport fund, that is backstopped with $1 from the general fund. If you want to spend $6,000 for something related to the airport and there's no money in the airport fund, how do you pay that check?
How does this have to do with the presentation that he just made? I'm trying to understand. This is discussion about the viability of the airport. We're talking about industrial park.
And the question is, does the Economic Development Committee or the Airport Committee have a budget and a budget plan for fiscal year 2019-2020, including ending the subsidy from the general fund of our city to the airport fund?
Madam Mayor, this is out of line. This is not a discussion about that particular issue. There's a point on the agenda where if you'd like to make that, you can. This is about questions from a presentation, not a chance to try and persuade people in here that you want to get the airport killed. I understand that.
So going back to it, I know sometimes you ask questions to get to a point. Could you maybe get to that point?
There are 2 points. One is I'm fully in support of exploring alternate uses for the acreage that, as portrayed, has been ignored to date. There are any number of possible uses for that acreage. But at this point, the city has committed itself to a number of leases where the revenue coming in does not match the revenue coming out. When are we going to move to a plan and paying customers so the airport is a net plus to the city fund rather than a minus?
So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and the purpose of the presentation, to my understanding, is not to discuss the airport finances in the airport. I think it's just being brought up because it is the property next to the airport, but this is a conceptual, economic, industrial plan.
I got one more. Let's go back to that residential. I have to know a little bit about that resident. That resident's got a 99-year lease, right? Is that going to affect anything having to do with our park?
The way we've got it developed, no.
No?
No. What we'll be doing is,
Nor the gun range?
actually it'll be enhancing the gun range because it'll be putting a paved road up to the gun range, which will make it more feasible to be able to be used, and hopefully they'll put an indoor gun range up there later on.
So are we also looking into having the gun range actually paid to be
Yes,
there?
indeed. That's part
Okay.
of our plan going
Okay,
forward.
thank
We've
you.
got other areas too we've been working on to improve the economics. So.
Okay.
You know, if I may just say something with Peter, I think that one of the things we haven't met, the Economic Development Committee hasn't met, and I was hoping that we would, because Peter's got a good point. We do need to set a budget on these things. Looking at these things can be several $1 million, and for the most part, that can be brought in from outside because a lot of developers like to build a suit. So when they do that building, basically they do all the groundwork. The biggest thing that we need to do as a city is basically take a look to see if we can get federal grants to put in the infrastructure, because that's what's really required.
I
And
think,
if I may, on that point, let's be clear, we are competing with the city of Mount Shasta, for which the mayor is the city planner, for their brownfields project in the South Landing. They're seeking to attract federal, state, and county funds to develop that area into something that produces revenue for the city of Mount Shasta. We will be in direct competition. If you want to talk about green waste, that's good, but we need a plan. If you want to talk about industrial development, that's good, but we need a plan, and we know the city can't afford it.
so going back to, so my questions are very similar to that, a little bit more structured, but similar to that. So this is a concept plan. I assume that there's a number of different things that have to be looked at as far as moving forward. I know tonight it's just a presentation, there's no action item associated with this. What is it that you're asking the council to do moving forward?
I think you're going to have to look at zoning. It's going to have to be rezoned. Right now it's R1. It has to be zoned industrial or multi-use or a different type of use. I'm not sure. I'm not a planner, so I don't know.
And why people put R1 next to an airport is really
I have
odd.
no idea.
Yeah.
It's okay.
The other thing is that right now there are federal funds in order to get some of this improvement done. It's something I think that we should be looking at very closely. I do know that the Brownfield project over in Mount Shasta is moving forward. I think there's a lot more problems with that in the fact they have to go down through residential areas, and if they bring trucks into those areas, that's going to be a big problem for Mount Shasta. This, on the other hand, doesn't have that problem. We have probably 6 or 8 residents that are down in that area, and I think if we improve the roads and make them better for everyone, install a water and a sewer system in that location, we can actually tie it into our system, which would then tie into all of the area that could be annexed in the north side of Dunsmuir into the city. That tank up there would probably be 500,000 gallons to start, probably 1 million gallons a little bit later on. We'd probably have to drill a well or get water from another source.
Well, we're looking at too, from the county too.
We do have that. That's not a real high yield well. I think it needs to be a little higher than that, maybe a little deeper well. But the situation is that You have the opportunity to do this, and I think it's really great for the city to take a look at this. Actually, you could be on the cusp of something a lot bigger than what Mount Shasta is looking at, and you only have this area here. It's not in the rest of the county. The county really doesn't have a lot of industrial sites.
There's only one place in the whole county that has an airport next to an potential industrial site, and that's us.
That's it.
And I'm sorry, and the interstate at the same time, the three of them together. Industrial, interstate, and airport.
So due to time in the presentation, I'm going to move us forward. If we want to continue to talk about this or agendize this or refer it to planning commission, we can do so at the announcements and comments. So I would advise that we wait till then. All right, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Great. So moving on to item number 7, committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Nope, we moved announcements and reports from council staff. Only because I'm pretty sure not too many committees met.
Yeah, I don't.
The sheriff's committee, or the sheriff's contract committee, we met and went over our initial approach.
I'm sorry, I heard,
The sheriff.
The committee to negotiate the sheriff's contract.
I didn't even know we had that committee.
It's an ad hoc.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Carry on.
The ad hoc committee consisting of Councilmember Keisler and myself met with city manager on Monday and just went over a few things we'd like to prioritize in that negotiations, and mostly involved, just transparency and accountability. We understand that the people of Dunsmuir like the presence of law enforcement here. It's very expensive, just as law enforcement is expensive for the county, and so we're trying to renegotiate so the citizens of Dunsmuir receive exactly what they'd like from law enforcement at the best possible price. And we requested some documents from county, and we'll be meeting shortly. Do you have anything about that, Dave?
I would like to add that I appreciate the fact that I'm on this committee with you, and I like the fact that Matthew has made it clear that we ask a question to the sheriffs, and what that question is, what do we get for that hour? That's where we're going to start. They're asking for a considerable raise. And this is a good way to start. So I was pretty proud of you for that, and I thought it was genius. So in going forward in this contract, that's going to set the tone of what we want. Of course, we want the biggest bang for the less we can get.
Yeah.
But
Well, we'd like to reiterate we've been extremely appreciative of all the individuals who served in law enforcement capacity in Dunsmuir. We're deeply appreciative. But we're working with whatever resources we have to increase our presence and safety here.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other committee reports?
Well, I think, Madam Mayor, it would be timely to announce for our disaster committee.
I have it right
A
here.
meeting is coming, and I'm looking at Vice Mayor Bryan and scolding ourselves. I would like to have had the Finance Committee resolution on the agenda tonight, but we don't. We desperately need the Finance Committee.
We're in the middle of drafting it. We had some setbacks. Finance Director Blake is taking that on because he's been really involved with it. I talked to him. I know you talked to him as well. So we do need to move that forward. We hope to have it on the very next agenda.
Okay.
I would say let's make that a committee.
Let's make that happen.
Okay. Sounds good. And then as far as going back to what Councilmember Arth brought up, our Disaster Planning Advisory Committee will be having their first meeting next Thursday at 6 p.m., March 28th, and we will be meeting here. We will be discussing, we'll be doing a short training at the beginning so that I understand the Brown Act and a couple of other things. We'll also have a little bit of an overview of disaster planning concepts if anyone would like to come for that first part. And then the only major action item for that meeting is green waste for debris removal from the winter and autumn seasons. I'll have a little bit more of an announcement related to that at item number 9, but there will be an extensive conversation about the different programs we're hoping to have this spring and summer so that residents and businesses can clean up their yards in anticipation for the fire season this summer. So that is the large action item that's going to be on there. And then hopefully we will be scheduling our regular monthly meetings at that as well. So if people would like to attend and have some input when they meet, we're hoping to have a consistent schedule that we can put out to the general public. So everyone's invited to that. It's a Brown Act committee, so you're welcome to come and contribute to that committee. So thank you for that committee. They're very, very prompt, and when we get to announcements and public comments, you can ask questions about that. Any other committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 8, which is announcements and public comment. So these public comments are referring to things that are, one, not on the agenda for tonight, that are within the city's jurisdictional boundaries, as well as jurisdictional abilities. You may make a public comment on the committee reports and the consent agenda items as well, since those don't have their own sections. And you will have 3 minutes, so you can feel free to come up and address the council.
Madam Mayor, members of council, and city manager, it's nice to see you all here. It's also nice to know that I can stay home and watch on TV at my leisure, because I have a lot of confidence in all of you and what you're trying to do here. It wasn't like some days past when I worried about things. But I have suddenly been worried about 2 things I heard. One, that general fund accounts were in shortfall status, and the other is that there's a big, I don't want to call it scandal, a shock that the swimming pool suddenly needs a lot of money to keep it open. So I thought about those 2 things at home on my own for a while, and I called a friend of mine down in the Bay Area, and I put in front of everybody on the dais, except Julie. I'd be happy to make more copies if anyone wants them later, but it's only an illustration to make a point. But before I moved here, I was the president of a homeowners association with over 663 residences. And our budget was a little bit bigger than the city of Dunsmuir. And we never had a shortfall in our budget. We never got shocked about a swimming pool. And this document right here is one of the reasons why. So the only thing I'm asking the council to do, if it will, is to encourage our finance director, whom I've also mentioned this to this morning at a good meeting we had, to adopt something like this for the city. So if you look at the document with me, you can see at the top, it says February 2019. This is a current day thing. I just got this from the HOA. They emailed it up to me today. And as I was looking through it, I went down and went, oh my gosh, swimming pool resurfacing is there. So let's go back up to the top. This particular replacement fund, which is $1.5 million cash in the bank, but $1.5 million short of what needs to be paid eventually. But if you look across the columns with me for a second, you'll see every item that's in the common area that's serviced by the homeowners association has an estimated useful years. And so, for example, the swimming pool resurfacing is scheduled to be done every 12 years based on the technical information available at the time the jobs are done. You'll see in the next column, right next to the 12, remaining useful life, 4 years. That tells you that in 4 years, you're going to have a cost of pool resurfacing. You know when it's coming, you know how much it's going to be. The next column shows what that cost item is going to be.
Mr. Hicks, that's your 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, I know it does go very fast, but we appreciate the handout, and I know I had said prior to this meeting, if you could please maybe talk to Blake and Julie or send us an email to follow up, but I'll give you one last sentence to close out.
Great. So if you look down at the bottom at the 50% unfunded, this figure explains this whole thing, and it tells the governing body what it needs to do and how much money it needs to raise, and they use all that information to set homeowners' dues and collect them and start banking ahead of time to repair swimming pools and so on. I thank you very much for your attention. Be happy to answer any questions from anybody anytime between now and next council meeting.
Thank you.
And thank you, Deb. Yes, no, you can have it.
Good evening, City Council. Devin Warner, Shasta Avenue. I had a couple questions on the presentation. Thank you for making the presentation and for spending the time to collect the information, and I'm very interested in green waste. Are you suggesting that we might have green waste happening up there soon? And if so, did you contemplate what sort of green waste we could bring? Is it mostly yard clippings or really everything? Has that been?
So again, the public.
I'm interested in seeing some reports on that. I'm also interested in making sure that any development of the airport and an industrial park is going to include a study that will report to us about noise pollution and other types of pollution. I feel like Dunsmuir already has a fair amount of noise pollution. And, you know, we love our town and we don't want to erode our quality of life. And one other thing I wanted to mention, I'm a new member of the Planning Commission. Thank you for electing me. And Council Member Arth came to our very first meeting and offered to work with us on safety planning, disaster planning, and as a member of the commission, I'm returning that favor to you. I'd like to come up with some kind of an ad hoc committee so we can, you know, expedite the process before fire season hits. And my final question for you, Madam Mayor, is you just mentioned a Brown Act meeting and I didn't catch the time.
It is going to be next Thursday, March 28th, beginning at 6 p.m. And I believe Julie has already posted our agenda. Tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, 6 p.m. for Brown Act and then followed by?
No, so just really quick, so the meeting is for the Disaster Planning Advisory Committee, and the first item on the agenda is a training on Brown Act, just because they are a Brown Act standing.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm terribly interested.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Just have a quick question about that, Paris Patrick. Was that part open to the public?
Which one?
The Brown?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole meeting is open to the public.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. There'll just be a training at the beginning. Cool. Are there any other public comments on items that are not on the agenda or are on our consent agenda or were on the presentation that was given? Seeing none, we will move forward. We are now on item number 10, consent agenda. And just to reiterate for the general public and the council, on our consent agenda is actually new business item 13C and 13D, and the check register has been moved to new business. So is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Move the consent agenda.
Yep.
Okay, so real quick, you wanted to move the SB1 funding onto the consent agenda, which is great. By all means, go for it. But I did just want to mention that we could potentially add more projects to the resolution. So there could be like a sidewalk project. We talked with our public works director, and we have a big need for crack sealing and a big need for sidewalks. So if you wanted to add a secondary project, we're more than happy to do that. But that's just what I wanted to mention. But it can be totally approved with the crack
That may
seal
have been
project.
nice to know when we were going through and
Yes.
talking about the order of the agenda.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
No, seriously.
Yeah, that would have been nice to know. So,
That was my fault. I said, wait until.
okay, so we're gonna take 10, what would have been 10D and move it back down to new business. So basically, we have one item on the consent agenda now, which is the livestock authorization resolution. And I will read the title of that resolution here. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Dunsmuir authorizing access to federal, state, and local summary criminal history for licensing cannabis retail and cannabis industry purposes by title only, resolution number 2019-08.
Move the consent agenda.
All right. Is there a second to move the consent agenda as read?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as read, the resolution 2019-08 by title only, All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Live scan resolution is confirmed. I will say it may behoove the city to not require the live scan until we get a response from the Department of Justice. Because when the city of Mount Shasta did that, it took them several months to get back to us. So live scan is required at both the local and state level. So someone's going to get live scanned, so it's usually not a thing. So you might want to do that on the applications. Just saying, you don't have to. All right. Moving to item number 11, public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled for tonight, so we'll move to item number 12, old business. There is no old business. So we'll move to item number 13A, which is new business, airport FAA grant application resolution. City Manager Brannigan or Finance Director?
Yes, okay, thank you. So we do have our airport consultant, Carol Ford, is in the audience as well if there are questions regarding anything. So what we have is just a resolution, basically boils down to authorizing city manager to, one, apply for FAA grant, and then also sign once it's been accepted. So there's those two options there. So a little background on it, the city can apply for funds. It could be about $150,000 per year, 4 years. So that's a total of $600,000 in total, but right now we're going for a grant that is $160,000 total. That's the full amount of the grant. It is for airport parking, the apron section of it. Wanted to point out, in terms of my eyes, I wanted to point out the fiscal impact of this grant. So as you can see, the FAA grant will pay up to 90% of the grant. So if you have a $160,000 grant, it'll pay $144,000 back to us, okay? So that leaves an $8,800, no, that leaves a $16,600 deficit that the California Department of Transportation offers a 4.5% match. So that brings the amount that the airport technically owes of $8,800. So that's what I have in the staff report there. Now, the thing with that is that within the grant, we have $15,000 of our admin expenses that go into the grant. So I wrote on here on the fiscal impact, there's none, which technically there's not. We're allowed to put in the $15,000 admin expenses, which is what we're already expending.
So it's your in-kind?
Yeah, so that pay grant.
So we-
$8,800 is part of that $15,000. Can be counted as part of the administrative cost. Correct.
$15,000 of administrative costs that the city pays goes within this grant.
Where's that $8 grand? $8 grand, $8,800.
My question is, have we used up a portion of this with airport already? Where are we at?
This is for next year.
Next year.
Oh,
This is next year's grant funds.
So what Blake is saying is
1920.
that typically if we would not have done this ourselves, we would have had to pay $8,800 to match this grant. But because we are doing in-kind services to administer, that's covered and we don't have to pay any additional besides the staff time we've already paid.
Staff time.
Applying to this fiscal year.
Yeah, so this is for
There's another
1920.
point that wraps into this is the larger picture, and that is that there is a airport capital improvement plan that comes along, and that's where we identify over a 5-year period of time the various projects that we entail that we know we need to eventually have. And so theoretically, as you're going through that 5 years, you're getting $150,000 each year, and then you do your part. This particular item is next in our ACIP. We did the item we needed to do last year to move along. Now we're at this one. And the critical item about this is that in order to get what we're hoping for and holding our breath for, about $2.5 million no match, we need to show them that we're moving along. We're following up on our plan. We're doing our part of the bargain. So that's why this fits in right now. It's the idea that we need to show them that we're engaged and we're following along. We've done the other parts of the plan. This is simply the next step.
So thank you for the context. Just to bring the council back to how we deal with this. So the staff report's given. Now we're at clarifying questions, and then we'll open up public comment, and then we'll come back for discussion. But thank you for all the clarification and history. That I think that helps kind of put us where we're at.
I have one clarification question. What strings are attached by the FAA regarding this grant?
So Carol may have a little better understanding, but it is, you have to keep airport operations for, I believe it's 10 years, 20 years.
Do we have any idea of what current obligations we are under based on prior grants received?
If you want to come up to the mic, you can answer.
Please, welcome, Ms. Ford.
Hi, my name is Carol Ford, and I'm with Ford and Associates LLC, and I've been helping the airport for several years now. So, and I write the grant application. So, what was the last question?
Yeah.
Oh, the grant, the obligations. They have grant assurances, and the federal government wants to be sure that if they continue to send money to any sponsor, Dunsmuir is the sponsor of their airport, that they will, that the money won't be in vain, that you'll agree to keep it open for 20 years. You'll have non-discrimination at the airport. You'll keep poor zoning away from the airport. You know, you won't build a skyscraper right next to it, which could hamper flights, that sort of thing. And I think that the city has a copy of the grant assurances. They come with the grant, but I can easily send you another one if you want more detail. There's about 20 of them.
Okay, so it is 20 years, not 10?
Yes, it's 20 years.
Yeah, and going back on this, how does this change our current obligation? What was the last time we committed?
Last year.
Last year, and that was also a 20-year?
Well, current year.
Current year, okay.
Well, right, thank
So
you.
we're already 20 years out, this would just extend our official obligation to the FAA by 1 year.
Yes.
Zoning restrictions, could you elaborate a little bit on that, given that we just saw a presentation with this park?
There was nothing in the presentation that would conflict with use of the airport. The FAA is interested in not having tall buildings at the end of the, you know, right at the end of the runway. And so it's that kind of zoning. There's, let's see.
Were there restrictions on, say, the type of businesses that could occupy that space?
That space, no, because that's not owned by the airport. If it were airport property, there would be. They have to be aviation businesses on an airport because you can park your boat someplace else, but you can't park your plane someplace else. So it has to be aeronautical use.
All right, Councilmember Ard had some questions, and then we'll go to Councilor.
I guess for Blake, the memo that you prepared for us says, in the background discussion portion, $8,800 will be paid from the airport fund. But what you're saying orally is $0 will be paid from the Air Force fund. It will all come from the $15,000 that you put into the grant proposal.
So we allocate salaries, admin expenses to the airport. So that comes from the airport fund, comes from airport revenues.
Well, and to be clear, I suppose you didn't put it on this report because it's next fiscal year, so we have yet to allocate anything for next fiscal year. But last year, we chose to...
As we face the existing deficit in the airport fund, will this add to it? Will it subtract from it? Or will it have no effect?
This on itself will have no effect. Could potentially decrease the deficit.
I'm going to ask the same question a different way.
Please do.
This $8,800, is it coming out of that $1,500 that you allocated?
$15,000.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Well, that's what
I would also like...
And the memo should have said that.
yeah, because that puts it. One more guy? Ms. Ford, I want to thank you for everything you do for the city of Dunsmuir. I know you've been a trooper for a while, and you're only this big, but you're a powerhouse, and I appreciate you. In this, all that we're talking about between you and Richard and my friend Bruce, is there any discussion of lengthening the airport to increase size and changing the whole aspect, or are we stuck with what we got?
I'm going to be diplomatic.
Okay, I appreciate it.
And I don't think lengthening the airport would really help in this situation. It would be very expensive because at one end you have a drop off and at the other end you have a hill.
Rock.
Yeah. So you're sort of between a rock and a hard place,
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay.
But you, and I don't think that impacts the usefulness of the airport. that it's not longer. First of all, the FAA isn't interested in spending a lot more money for very little gain. Most airplanes that would need to come into Dunsmuir are already able to do it, so you don't need a longer runway for it.
So just bringing the council back to questions, we're just asking questions on the apron reconstruction. If we want a whole presentation on the airport capital improvements plan, everything else and recommendations, we can set that as a future agenda
I think
item.
we all have quite a few questions
Yeah.
on it. I think that would be appropriate. to have a-
Actually, this might warrant a special meeting down the road where we
I'm
exclusively
kinda
focus
serious.
on
Just a workshop?
an airport meeting.
And I would say in support of that, there's a fundamental fork in the road. And either the Mott Dunsmuir Airport is going to be styled to serve air traffic, no fueling service, no mechanic, most of the hangars rented out for non-aircraft purposes, firing range, etc. Either it's going to go to economic development like Mount Shasta with different non-aircraft uses, or it's going to be an airport. Nobody I know in Dunsmuir uses the Dunsmuir Airport. So I need to be comfortable with what we're doing.
So let's, again, focus up. We are just talking about the parking apron. It sounds like we're all in.
I think this warrants a special
Correct.
meeting.
So we're just on the item at hand, so I'm actually gonna, thank you very much. I'm gonna move this to public comment since we're starting to move really quickly into discussion. So I will open this item up for discussion, and so anyone who would like to come and comment just on the aircraft parking apron reconstruction, not the whole plan, we will probably do another item in the future.
I have a question,
All right,
and my question is this: when we get to the stage where the pavement is in, will there be a fueling station and a fuel tank so we can tell people we got new runways and you can gas your plane up here? That's my question.
thank you. Are there any other public comments related to just the parking apron reconstruction?
Oh, here comes the man himself.
Just to let you know that on the airport reconstruction on the apron right there for the parking, it's going to help the drainage at that location. So that's going to really impact all of the hangars, that they're not going to be flooded out. So it's going to make it better actually, and we know it's all starting to crumble, so we do need to get this done so it doesn't deteriorate even further.
Right, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment. We'll now move into discussion. I'm going to start off. Do we have a timeline on this SB1 resolution? Is this something that needs to get signed in the next, couple of weeks?
Well, SB1 is not, so this FAA.
Sorry, FAA, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, FAA.
The FAA grant, the FAA is very adamant that we need to get this in. I think it was due prior to this date.
Okay. So, obviously, this is time sensitive and can't be put off, but I do know that there is a strong interest for the council to have an overall workshop on the airport in general. I think that's definitely going to need to be coordinated between the airport committee and the finance committee, because that's pretty much the two main things that we're looking at is the capital improvements to that, and definitely ensuring that we're working towards a neutral budget. If we can get to zero, that's nice at this point.
On that neutral budget, there is 15,000 that are other administrative costs as well. That's mainly paying for the consultant.
Yeah.
That's definitely helpful to the budget.
Yeah, correct.
Exactly what to the budget?
It's helpful.
Definitely helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta speak those
Well,
words
at
up.
this point, though, I'd like to point out that it's this body, the city council, that determines we allocate so much of the administrative costs, and they are already paid. But there could be other things we could allocate them for. We could choose to do this for the airport, so it should be taken with some seriousness as well. We are deciding to put more resources, albeit indirect, but some resources towards the airport by that allocation in the next budget.
Okay. So is there any other points of discussion on this matter? Like I said, there is, I will be working with the vice mayor to place the airport workshop on a future agenda item to go over the greater thing, but is this a discussion on the project at hand?
Make sure that it's agendized so that we can all participate, so that we're not, Peter's not on a committee or I'm not on a, we all want to be part of
Correct.
this discussion.
It'll be a full council workshop.
Cool.
This is the first time that I have heard that we are we're talking about keeping the airport open for 20 years, that we are making a deal with the FAA to keep the airport open for 20 years, apropos to the Vice Mayor's comments, that is a significant commitment that we need to talk about. So I fully support deferring action and having the conversation.
I think there's some misunderstanding about this 20 years. We're in the 20 years, I mean, it's been going on for 20 years.
What?
I'm saying that 20 years ago, they spent money, 19 years ago, they spent money, 18 years ago, they spent money. We're not going to be getting out of this for another 19 years at best. So the idea of maybe we can stop doing the airport right now and we'll save something just puts us down the same path we went in back in 2010 when we walked away from the airport.
That was when I was mayor,
I know.
and Mario and I thought that was the correct call.
And I would say that when I talked with people in the FAA, airport people at the conferences, and I said that they just decided to walk away and not call the FAA and just assume that somebody sometime would realize we weren't interested in running an airport anymore, they were in shock. Nobody, I spent 22 years in the Navy, which is a federal government, and the idea that you would just say, well, we're going to stop doing it, we're going to walk away from $120,000 of grants that we had. We had just spent about $90,000 on a new airport layout plan, which we had to do over again because we walked away from it. So the idea that we might just say, well, maybe we don't want to do the airport, to me, it doesn't jive with my whole life of living how you deal with the federal government and a project of that magnitude.
Councilmember Deutsch.
Thank you.
We're going to have a workshop on the overall airport, but we are still at the topic at hand. My understanding from Peter's discussion is, and I was going to ask you this, is was that a motion to defer this item to a future meeting?
Yes, please.
I would second that.
So there's been a motion to defer.
We got a problem there.
Excuse me, Mayor.
The FAA has been asking me to put this grant in, and if we don't have it in the next few days, we could lose the $150,000 for this year, or $144,000 for which we're asking.
$2.5 billion.
We also have put in a grant, I put it in last August, for a $2.5 million grant, which requires no match. Ordinarily, it would be $100,000 for the city approximately, and $100,000 from the state. But this grant, which gives no match, they haven't chosen them yet. We're still in the running for it. But in the meantime, to follow the sequence, we're doing this design for this grant, and I would appreciate it. It would be in your best interest, the city's best interest, to decide on this tonight.
All right, thank you. So knowing that, and there was a motion to defer, which in a sense, from the sound of that, it's actually a motion to deny, basically signing this.
But in light of new, with the new information that we've received, I want to rescind my second. And
So I'm going to go back to the original motion on the floor, so the second's been rescinded. Do you want to rescind your motion?
No, if it goes forward, I'll just vote no.
$2.5 million, Pete.
But anyway,
Okay.
so there's a motion on the table to defer, which from the understanding that this would mean that we would not be going after the grant. Is there any second for that original motion? Seeing none, the motion fails. Is there a motion on the table?
Before we move to the motion, I would like to reiterate that being forced to decide this relating to that sum and this project in the context of a little baby step we have to do to hopefully get to the next step, I think we should work diligently to understand where we're at and where we're moving forward with the city before these sort of decisions are placed before the city council. No one wants to lose out on a potential $2 million plus benefit to the city. We would love to see a functioning airport up there. I think everyone would. The belief that it can be functioning is a reasonable one. How many times are we going to approve little things with the hope of something bigger happening and changing everything? It's a little discouraging. I would like to hope that staff would try to prepare discussion items beforehand before we get to these decisions that are small in and of themselves, but the pressure of the entire decision is placed upon them.
And there's an obligation, that's a big impact for us, so thank you. I would second that as well. So is there more? I've closed it. And
I know that you allowed other information to come in.
She's our staff member who's assisting with this. Thank you. And we have, I believe your item is next. So
I move that we authorize the signing of the grant application and by the city manager.
Madam Mayor, may I?
You want to correct
I'd like
that?
to make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the grant agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration and the California Department of Transportation for the Airport Improvement Program project number 3-0066-0066-219. 2019.
I second that.
And authorize the city manager to execute any other documents associated with acceptance of said grant funds by resolution 2019-09.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Seconded.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, there's been a request for a roll call, so we'll run through. Councilmember Deutsch?
Aye.
Councilmember Bryan?
While I am eager to have the ultimate success of the airport determined, I don't want to send mixed messages to the Federal Aviation, to the FAA. I think it's wrong if we ultimately need to come to them and say, we're a broke city that can't afford this airport, to be piecemealing them with little things we're trying to fix and spending our own money. We're sending mixed signals because we ourselves have mixed signals. Until I know for sure what direction we have to move in, I'm going to abstain.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Keisler?
I vote yes.
Councilmember R?
No.
That's a 2-2, Madam Mayor.
That's a 2-1-1. I haven't voted yet.
Okay, well,
I share the sentiment of Councilmember Bryan. This is a concerning topic, and we will be hosting a workshop sooner rather than later on this, because I would agree, I don't like being put into a position like this without having more information on alternatives, understanding our obligations. But for the sake of today and making incremental improvements, I will vote in favor today. If this does come to me again, I will not vote in favor of this. I don't like making decisions like this.
notice.
Correct. So it is a 3-1-1 and resolution and motion carries.
Boy, that was fun.
Yeah.
We're starting to do our job.
I know. All right, we will now be moving on to new business item 13B, which is the treasurer report. Or treasurer report.
Council, as of March 21, 2019, the city of Dunsmuir has $361,000 in its checking account, 1.8 in LAIF. The aggregates of that are, and we have a sewer bond reserve fund with 41,000 in it, a Van Fossen Reserve Fund with 27,000 in it, and a water bond reserve fund with 30,000. The aggregate of the general fund and the checking account, the general fund has $154,000 in it. The sewer fund has 281. The sewer improvement fund has $273,000. And the solid waste has $27,000. The water fund has $217,000, and the water improvement fund has $24,000, and the airport fund is a negative $14,000. In our LAIF funds, that's local area investment funds, the general fund has $164,000 in it. The sewer improvement fund has $345,000 in it. The solid waste has $224,000 in it. The water has $579,000 in it. The water improvement fund has $382,000 in it. So thank you.
Before you go, was there any other recommendations or information that you have for council on the status of these, or anything that you would like us to take into consideration?
Presently, as far as treasurer, we would like when Blake and the city manager can find time to go over the investment create an investment plan and give him the authority to deal with the reserve funds, put them in something that would make a little bit of more money than they do now. It's pretty paltry sum. And then at large, when we get a little more into this and there's a real finance committee, we should set a policy as far as the LAIF funds, see if there aren't any alternatives that might be a little bit more beneficial to the city. LAIF is a program run by the state of California. The cities love it because it's you're able to get your cash out and in whenever you need to real easily. But if we were a little bit more prudent and put the money, we can get a lot better returns. And obviously that would help the city. So those are two things that need, when time can be scheduled for council to receive resolutions and then put into policy.
Thank you.
On average, do you know what sort of returns we currently receive?
Really bad. Do you want to know?
I do.
We have one at .05 APN. We have one at .009 APY, and one at .009 APY.
That's annual percentage in your...
Yield, yeah.
.009.
Actually, it's an instrument. The City of Dunsmuir doesn't have a lot of staff time. We've gone through, in my duration, a couple financial managers and a couple city managers, and this has actually been a topic of conversation with city managers and financial managers. We haven't been able to institute a program, and obviously all of it has to come in front of council because anything financial is council say. So it's just a matter of having Blake get on staff and learn all the ins and outs of Dunsmuir, and then he has been writing a lot of procedures and stuff for the city of Dunsmuir that we haven't had. And then the city's had to address several issues in the past with handling of DOT cash and other financial things that have to have happened and be instituted in the city. There are reports that come from the auditors, and so we've been trying to catch up. The city's been working on its financial process for a while. So.
Thank you very much. Council members, are there any questions to the treasurer at this time?
Another brief question. With that LAIF fund, does U.S. Bank facilitate that the way we...
No. It's
totally separate.
State of California local area investment fund. And most cities use it because the money's real liquid. So.
And that's 2.39%. Just came out.
Councilmember Arthur, you had a question?
There's more things that I agree with Mario on than disagree with, having served together a decade ago. And as we construct the Finance Committee moving forward to try to strengthen the city's oversight and controls of its budget, I have never been clear as to the role of the treasurer. Is the treasurer of the city of Dunsmuir an umpire, an advocate? What role do you see the treasurer playing in the matrix of doing better?
The bottom line of what a treasurer is the basically watchdog of the money that goes in the bank and out of the bank. All financial decisions are made through the city manager and made by council. Council is responsible for every financial decision that's made. So the treasurers in some cities and the treasurer in other cities may or may not sit on some committees like the financial committee or other things as they come up, because it's really not a specific duty. In the city of Dunsmuir, and this is a 2010 forward history, the treasurer has been involved in the presentation of the budgets and also the audits. The thing there is council would do it at their request. It's not in the city law or city code. I can say that I was on council for 2 years, as Peter was. One of those years I served on my first budget, and then 4 to 5 years from that I started sitting on city budgets. And so I do have an overview and a track record of these things, and it's an involved process, as you guys will quickly witness. And this city's come a long ways. Our data doesn't go back that many years because it's not, it wasn't done all through fund balance. It was done on a lot of Excel spreadsheets that didn't collate with actual information in the accounts, and that's kind of critical. That's one of the things that Mark insisted on. The budget we got last year, Mark rushed through and hammered out, and it was the best budget the city's ever had as far as the public and the people working on the committee had a chance to actually see the numbers and make sure everything was right. There are a lot of mistakes, and you kind of got to catch them. Hopefully with these presentations from fund balance, there won't be as obvious as it's been in the past. But it's a process. I figure if everything went smoothly, it's 5 meetings, and with 2 weeks apart, you know, it extends. It takes a chunk of your life to go through it. And it's really hard for a lot of people to read numbers. I don't know why, I just love it. But, you know, it's a hard thing to grasp. I hope that in going forward, that everyone that's a council member gets a chance to get their head around how municipal finances work. They're different than anywhere else, and they can be challenging. So
thank you, and thank you for taking the time, and I do appreciate the 2 recommendations that we had. I'm going to now, seeing no other questions, I'm going to open this now up for public comment. Thank you, Mari. Any public comment on the treasurer's report? Okay.
I had a question for the finance director. Did you say that 2.39 was an available rate for the city's funds?
So again, public comment is addressed to the city council.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. I'm wondering if we could find out whether or not that 2.39 is available for all of the city's accounts, and whether or not in order to make funds available, if they're not immediately available, there could be rolling CD deposits. So you could do a 90-day CD every 30 days as you put the money in, so it could start coming out pretty quickly. I hope you'll look into that. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, I will move this into council discussion. Thank you, Mario. We appreciate it. So kind of to the question is are we able to kind of expand on the 2.39 and a couple of other investments?
I think if I'm understanding the question, it's kind of, can we maximize our dollars in LAIF? And yes, that is what we are doing. Further to the question in terms of CDs and things like that, there is potential for that, which makes a great investment policy that we would love to get into.
Do you have restrictions on the type of funds we could invest in, or deposits we could make with different institutions? Is it all through this leaf, through a government organization managing the funds?
So, well, LAIF is just a government organization.
Yeah, generally we have the reserves. What sort of restrictions do we have? I'm sure there are some on where we can place that money for returns.
Well, lots of no restrictions whatsoever, but you do want to have an investment policy that makes sense. Maybe where I'm going with is some of these, you know, the reserve funds, those have to be in specified funds. So that's a requirement from our loan that we have. So I think if that answers part of the question, but and the money's in LAIF, we can, according to whatever investment policy we would like to have. I mean, there are certain California restrictions on it that.
It's a very basic stuff.
But yeah, basically, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Is there any other discussion on the treasurer's report? I do have a little bit, I do support, looking at the investment plan for the reserves and setting a policy that would better optimize those. If it's all right with the council, I would like to set that as a financial priority for the next fiscal year to at least come to us with some type of policy. I know you're working on the budget for next year already, so I don't want to deter you from that. So when the budget cycle is completed, I would hope that we could refer this to the finance committee starting at the next fiscal year.
We'll take it out of the budget.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yep. All right, seeing no other discussion, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is, we'll go back to 13D, which is the SB1 funding resolution.
Okay, yes, sorry, I was
It's
going to
okay.
mention it, but really
We're
it's not so I'll just boil it down to, we can propose other projects as people see fit, as the council sees fit. I talked with Public Works, and the two projects that he mentioned was the crack sealing, maybe even a slurry seal. Is that the right word?
Chip seal.
Well, chip seal, but then is there something that overlayment as well? I don't know. So, okay, slurry seal, chip seal.
Yeah.
Right, I think it's sealing cracks or a whole overlayment. So there's those, it's kind of two options in terms of the roads. Then there's potential for sidewalk maintenance. So SB1 funds are from the gas taxes, so they have to be on roads or streets.
Mm-hmm.
There's a slight thing in terms of safety. So other than that, I just wanted to throw out there that in staff's eyes, it would be nice to have maybe two projects.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you did want to prioritize those projects, then Baysware's looking to see how you want to spend this $27,807.
So again, we're...
And that's an estimate, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. So just to, again, we'll do questions right now, and then we'll move to public comment, and then we can discuss and make motions. So any questions for clarification? All right, so can this be used for cycling infrastructure as well?
If it's a street or a road,
Okay,
let's go for it.
kind of.
I mean, like a cycling lane or something?
Yeah,
sort of thing?
like striping and...
Within the street or a road.
Street or a road.
There you go. Well, it wouldn't be able to be a class one. But anyway, all right, I will now open this item up for public comment. Anyone who would like to come and speak on the SB1 resolution?
Thank you. Kevin Warner, I just want to thank you for your comment about cycling infrastructure. We don't seem to have any dedicated cycling infrastructure in Dunsmuir, and I say build it and they will come. And as a member of the public, I state my support for your suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment related to the SB1 resolution? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and go into discussion. Leading off with, we did set our priorities as a council to include sidewalk prioritization. So if there's no protest from any of the council members, I believe we would like to have sidewalk repairs in this SB1 resolution.
Great.
So we would like to amend that so that it matches the goals that we've set for ourselves.
Cool. So, and this is not like a pressing item. We do have other council meetings if you would like to do it, or you can adopt the resolution to add a second project. That would be sidewalk maintenance, and I'll work up you have to have estimated useful life. Like if you look on what my project is for the street, location, estimated life, cost funding, and things like that, justification behind it. So I can write all that up if you want to.
And then bring it back as an amended.
We can do that or adopt as amended.
Is there any other discussion for this item? Councilman Rohr?
Well, thank you to the mayor for her addition. For all of this, we should realize at this point we have no public works committee whatsoever that I'm aware of. So if we try as a representative of the city to the Regional Water Action Group, as the finance director knows, there's a very specific set of metrics where we compete with other jurisdictions, including the city of Mount Shasta, for what projects are worthy of funding and why. And of course, I've been advocating from the cheap seats for a decade that we need to fix our sidewalks, and the objective comes back to, we'll fix our sidewalks when we can afford it. So we need to start planning for our infrastructure besides water and sewer, and we need to prioritize our funding requests accordingly. So I appreciate the mayor at least making some room for fixing the sidewalks, but it's a notion to all of us, without knowing who the next city manager is, the council needs to start working with the planning commission on what our infrastructure needs are looking 10 years out. Thank you.
Yep. And actually, part of mine, I would prefer to prioritize sidewalks over chip seal because everybody walks and not everybody drives. And so theoretically, it would impact a lot more people by improving walkways.
Have we determined for sure that sidewalks fits into roads?
Yeah, I do believe they are eligible for SB1 funding.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And I would, if it's okay for the council, I would like to at least receive some information, if not in the resolution, but at least in the staff report, because I would feel comfortable having it come back to us with the language in the resolution that it needs to have prior to approval.
Yeah.
I would like to know if you could put in the staff report if we can include any cycling infrastructure into the SB1, and then what would that look like that would be eligible? Because there's a number of different things you can do, crossings that are in the road. Does that include striping, things like that? So it would be nice to have something in the staff report referring to that, and if there are some options for us to include in the SB1 request.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is the motion that you are seeking to bring it back to us to be read tabled?
So it would be a motion to amend the resolution to include sidewalk prioritization or sidewalk repair, and then to return the item to council for further consideration.
I second that.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
So I'll just say that this is exactly kind of what SB1 wanted in California. They wanted discussions like this. That's the whole point of.
Well, you got it.
You get points for all of this. I'm sure stated.
Well,
I think
let's be
Governor-
serious. In the resolution we're about to vote on, whereas the city has undergone a robust public process to ensure public input into our community's transportation priorities / project list. Let's be clear, we haven't done that.
Probably remove the word robust.
Can do.
Okay. So we're not approving the resolution tonight. We're going to bring it back.
All right, Madam Mayor.
There's
Mr.
a-
Hart, are you entertaining
No, I think
Public meeting?
he just brought up that point.
Okay.
Like the word robust probably removed.
Okay.
But anyway,
And
so
then-
there's a motion on the table.
I really just want to point out, I guess, too, that the roads, our report says it needs about $225,000 worth of infrastructure for the roads. So that was my main impetus for suggesting Project One as the roads be very important.
All right, so there's a motion on the table to amend to include sidewalks and to bring to a future meeting for consideration. There's been a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Abstention? Motion carries. Councilmember Art, may I recommend that you make a motion to refer maybe reviewing our capital improvements plan or possible infrastructure improvements for the next fiscal year to Planning Commission prior to coming to council,
That'd be great.
since that's going to go to our budget about what we're going to be
Yeah.
spending money on regarding capital improvements. Would that be okay to take it to planning and ask the question of what do you think needs to be improved? Is that okay?
Fine by me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like to make that motion?
I would strongly support that, Madam Mayor, with the notion we just appointed citizens to the planning commission and they're not potted plants. So
Yes.
let's work together.
All right. So,
Let's see, I do want to make sure that we can meet prior to this resolution actually needing to be
yeah, no, I
adopted.
believe we can bring the SB1 back to us, but I think it is definitely important to start the process and the culture of having planning commission review our infrastructure needs on an annual basis and giving some recommendations to city council.
And then also just just to develop a project list.
Yes.
So we're not actually saying that we're definitely doing this. So project list, so that can be,
Yeah, that way we
Yeah.
develop a list for you and you
Can-
know what's going
we
on.
can
Madam
always,
Mayor, I gotta say something. Speaking of my I gotta say something. In my ethics training, and I'm not throwing nothing out there, I'm just saying, in my ethics training, I was taught that a city council member does not go to the planning commission because it's a form of intimidation.
So,
In these days, I'm welcoming the fact that we're working together. It's great. But I do want to specify, I want to say that if the planning commission ever feels that any of us council members are there and you feel intimidated, you need to speak up right there. Ask us to leave. Don't play the game. We're here to help. We all work together. But there is that line. And I want to make sure that myself and none of my other colleagues cross that line. So I had to put that up there so I could sleep tonight. Mr. Arth, I appreciate you. You're thank you.
So,
Thank you.
going back to the item, thank you. Going back to the item at hand, I believe you would like the motion to refer Planning Commission puts together a list of infrastructure projects, preferably on an annual basis, to help with this whole SB1 and any other capital improvements funding. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Matter has been referred to Planning Commission, and then we will also have the SB1 coming back with the amendments that we discussed prior. All right, we are now moving on to 13E, accept final rate study report, set public hearing date.
Wait, now the music. Da, 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 da.
Or actually, I will entertain a quick recess. We want to take a quick recess before this one.
Is that what you want?
Yeah? Okay, 5 minutes. All right, thank you. Whenever Harrison's ready, Devin, you.
We're live.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll come back from our recess to item number 13E, accept final rate study reports and set of public hearing date, City Manager Brand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So before you today, we have the rate study for the solid waste and for the sewer enterprises that's been worked on throughout the year. Our engineer, Paul Ritter, came to a special meeting last week. He brought the final rate studies, made sure they're at City Hall by Monday, which I put into all the council's box. So those are the final, we're hoping to be the final rate studies, if accepted. And also we're looking to set a protest date for the 218 process. What's being suggested is May 16th as the earliest we can have the public hearing. That's where we need to send out notices, and we need a 45-day from the time we send out notices. So May 16th would be the earliest date that we can get things going, and that's a recommended date because of if the Prop 218 is successful, there's going to be a lot of work by the Finance Department to implement all the new, especially in the sewer, all of the flow testing. The sewer system is going to be flow for commercial, so there's going to be a lot of work for the Finance Department to get the average flow rates and work with the Tyler Tech fund balance to make sure that everything's done right by the July 1st. So if this gets put off at a later date, which could happen, it puts a tighter crunch on the Finance Department to get those things in place. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
All right, so we will start with clarifying questions from council. Peter, or
Ma'am?
Heisler?
Go. Mr. R., Bruce, Matthew, Madam Mayor, there's been a lot of work put in, and we're here. And this is it. I really don't think there's any more questions to be asked. This is it. So, there you go.
As a member of the committee, long serving, I agree. I would still like to discuss sewer first and then solid waste. My questions for the sewer side is besides the rate study, on a consensus basis, there are a number of recommendations that we agreed to. Switching over to a water-based sewer rate, collapsing some 50 schedules into an understandable, feasible tariff system, hiring before the beginning of the new fiscal year a wastewater 3 operator. There's probably 4 other recommendations. I would like the council to officially adopt those to assure ratepayers we're not just raising their rates, we're actually doing the reforms that we all agreed to. So if there's a way to do that, Madam Mayor, I would like to do that.
Right.
And make those official objectives that are part of the package, so when we talk to people about, do you really care about how high our rates are going up, we could say, yes, we're doing everything we can.
I would have to concur with that, and I would second any motion that was made.
So we're just in questions.
I'm just
We
telling
gotta
you.
go to public comment first, but thank you, I've written it down. Would you like to start on solid waste now?
Those are my only comments on solid waste.
Or, you mean sewer?
On sewer, thank you.
Okay, solid waste?
Well, solid waste is essentially the same comment. Louis Dewey and I were citizen members of the Solid Waste Committee. We actually thought that the committee was going to support looking at green waste, looking at who our current waste hauler is, and is there a better contract? All of these are recommendations that were determined to be outside the scope of the immediate solid waste study, but as I understand it, the city has a long-standing relationship with Clemens Waste Hauler. Did the committee that we spent so long on look at ways to reduce the costs of hauling our waste? No, we did not. Did we look at alternate hauling arrangements like Wairika did, like McLeod did? Did we call Recology and say, is this important? Can you do better? No, we did not. So, I was on the short end of a 4-1 vote, but I will continue to advocate for the recommendations in the solid waste study to hire a consultant to look at green waste, solid waste, recycling, and I don't know how the city is to enter a new contract, even if it's a 1-year contract, with Clemens without any idea whether it's cost effective and a good deal for the ratepayers.
Is there a question?
Nope.
Again, we're in questions and then we'll.
Well, again, the question is, I don't know what we're being asked to do tonight with accepting the rate studies. All I'm trying to do is say the rate studies included a number of recommendations other than changing the rates. And I don't want them lost in the exhaust because, as Councilmember Keisler said, we spent hours on it.
Okay.
I have one clarifying question.
Sure.
It relates to what we're trying to do here with the 218 process. My understanding is we're trying to get through this process the approval of a cap on the rates we could set, but that the actual rate setting could be independently set below the thresholds listed here in this rate study, correct?
That would be a question for the city attorney. The rate study is looking at what's being proposed has been, the key here is that the rates are fair and equitable to all classes. And the wastewater, they're now doing away with the classes other than commercial and residential. So if you lower the rate than what's recommended, you could have the argument that it's not fair because at some point you may have to raise it. But that would really be either Paul, our engineer, or
Well, my point being, I think, going with Councilmember Arth's concern, is, we have an operational deficit in each of these funds. It's very clear one's almost $100,000, and it's well over that. I'm in favor of these rate studies because they solve that immediate problem in this next year's budget. But if there is opportunity to lower the cost of solid waste for our ratepayers, and I'm led to believe that there's hope of at least slowing down the ever-increasing costs by maybe an examination of the study, that we're not tied into having to do this if we can find another way. I believe, as Councilman Zar's made, we can't just pass this and let it go on in the future, but we don't have to deal with it, because it's still important to try to work for the citizens of Dunsmuir.
I believe the answer to your question is yes. We are establishing a cap.
Yes.
And if we can bring down the expenses or add services as long as we stay below the cap.
So then
we have the flexibility.
So again, we're at questions, not discussion.
Yeah.
So if there's any other clarifying questions, then I'll move to public comment, and then we can talk all we want.
I may suggest you want to get some of those little buzzers where you can give us an electric shock every time we veer off course.
I
wouldn't do that.
I don't even do that for my dog.
Speak for yourself.
Anyway, so hearing no other clarifying questions and knowing that we can ask more questions, I will open this up for public comment. Anyone who would like to come in publicly comment on the final rate studies and the possibility of a public hearing on May 16th.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Madam Mayor. My name is David Hicks. I live at 5630 Dunsmuir Avenue with my wife, Nicole, a miracle woman. Institutional memory. You guys have been here some a long time and some a short time. But one of the things that was going on back 8-10 years ago was there were a whole lot of people that had some kind of special deals where they weren't paying water and sewer and get it for free. I wonder if that situation has been resolved or is that being considered? Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, is there any other public comment related to our final solid waste rate study and our wastewater sewer rate for the public hearing date? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and move us to discussion. I believe this did solve the inconsistencies in collection, correct? And that was a separate item. I'm not quite sure the whole history of the inconsistent collection, but I would assume that would be solved.
I'm not aware of anybody getting any water without a cost.
Yeah.
Correct.
That,
And I believe I asked at the last meeting and received the answer from Paul that this study is based off of just the number of ratepayers as if they all pay. So it doesn't take into account a percentage of collections that we might have to enter into.
Well, I would say that we do account for loss in the budget. So our engineer looked at our budgets, and there's a portion where we don't get monies back that are lost. So
Those were worked into the steps. What is the loss rate?
I don't know. I'd have to check that out. But we get it each year. You can see a trend of what the loss are each year.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Hicks, in regard, since I came on council, all in favor stopped. And another thing I would like to say is, it sure is nice to see you back in your arena with us, sir. Welcome back. Thank you.
All right. So going back to the kind of quasi discussion before public comment. So my recommendation when we do go to a motion is to adopt the final sewer and solid waste reports and the recommendations contained within. Is that an okay form of motion?
Well, as long as they don't go into the broom closet.
Correct.
So, on the final solid waste garbage rate study, Roman numeral 4, summary of findings, and 5.
What page you on, Pete?
I am in the fancy study that we all paid for, little I-B. That's the beginning of the summary of findings that I hope the mayor was referring to. And they end with the sentence, the rate committee agreed these efforts are beyond the scope of this study and that outside consultants, experts would be necessary to navigate these topics. I don't want that to be lost. We're looking at a meeting next week on green waste reduction. We're looking at the Clemens contract, and I'm okay as long as there's a commitment from the council that this is part of the deal.
Do you think it would be beneficial to perhaps create an ad hoc committee to maybe specifically deal with the contract?
I would say wait. So here's what I would recommend, is adopting the final sewer report and recommendations and findings contained within, and moving forward with staff recommended timelines and objectives to meet those findings if the 218 passes. So that way, we get through the 218 process, and the budget, you want to put?
Yeah, I think that given the timeline, the budget needs to be projected, similar to adopting this, we may be able to lower it, but doing that in time to not have a shortfall of $100,000 is a huge concern for our finances right now. I'd rather gain a little bit of money and then contribute that into our system.
Okay.
But just for instance, and I'm gonna step on Big Dave's toes maybe, Pace Engineering pushed as hard as they could push to tell the city of Dunsmuir and its ratepayers, you need a wastewater 3 operator before the end of this fiscal year.
Well, and if this
Are we
does,
gonna do that or not?
and if this does pass.
We have to.
Correct. So if this does pass, this does give us the ability to go forward with the hiring, and some of those things can be done
And that's what I'm looking for, is we're making that collective commitment as part of increasing rates.
Correct. Yeah, and there is and our city manager has been working on some of the internal stuff with the unions, so it is in the process. Is there any other discussion on the matter at hand? So we'll separate it, we'll do the reports first, and then we'll set the public hearing date if we move forward with the reports. So would you like me to repeat the?
Repeat?
Okay.
Because you had it pretty good.
Motion to adopt the final sewer and solid waste study reports and recommendations and findings contained within. In addition to that, a motion to move forward with a summary of objectives and timelines for the recommendations and findings if the 218 process is adopted and after it would be the 1920 budget cycle.
I'll second that motion.
Planning cycle. Okay. Julie, I apologize for all of these. Okay. I do keep notes and I do it back. All right, so there's a second to that? Is that
Yes,
clear?
ma'am.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
I will just say for the good of the order, knowing that the city manager is departing, I think it would behoove all of us, the city staff and the city council members, to reduce what you just said to a schedule.
Correct.
That is, if the citizens trust us to raise their sewer rates yet again, and they're solid, we have committed on paper to do the recommendations that go with it, with a schedule, and somebody's responsible for it.
Correct. All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of adopting the final sewer and solid waste study reports and the recommendations and findings contained within, and a motion to, which included in the motion is the approval of a summary and objectives and timelines to achieve those recommendations and findings if the 218 is adopted after the 1920 budget planning cycle. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. We'll now move to setting the public hearing date. The staff recommendation is May 16, 2019. What is the recommended time and place for that?
It'd be at the regular city council meeting?
Okay, at 6 p.m.?
Yes.
Here.
All right.
Okay.
I move to set, what?
Real quick, I have a clarifying question.
Okay.
Would it interfere with perhaps a busy agenda that we might otherwise have in place for the regular meeting?
Probably the only thing that would make it different is people that may come in at the last minute with a written objection. So we probably need to have somebody assist in collecting those and adding them to the count. But I would say by 6 o'clock we'd get that.
Should we perhaps make it an alternate Thursday, or does that mess with the time?
It would mess with, you could go to the week after. But it's,
Could we start at 5:30, accept the letters, start our meeting at 6, carrying on?
Sure.
I would like to just keep in mind that some people work. And 6 PM is at the end of the workday, so they may be able to make it to give their ballot. So I don't want to take that opportunity away for some people who may not be able to get off work before 5:30.
Should we
Could
perhaps
we
move the
extend,
regular
could we
meeting?
extend the letter turning time for 24 hours past the time that we start our meeting? So,
So it has to be taken at the.
Oh,
it's one of those. It's one of those.
As I recall, it went pretty quickly last time. It wasn't a laborious task, so I don't think it'll take up too much time.
We could make sure that staff is here a half hour before
Yep.
to open the doors and collect any protests that we can make.
Okay, could we move to
Yeah.
advertise this in the rate? Maybe an explanation? I know we
Oh,
talked
yes,
about it.
absolutely.
When do those go out for May in particular?
What's that?
April 15th.
Okay.
So we could maybe, doesn't have to be this next time, but maybe the time after that, if staff could prepare maybe both a letter of explanation for where the city's sewer and solid waste funds are, and why we're proposing this, just a synopsis, and then a flyer for public hearing.
Yes.
That would be great.
Well, the 218 notice, within the 218 notice is how you can protest, so we'll make sure that we
Yeah,
have that.
beyond the technical, how you can protest, where to show up.
Yes.
Prepare some city statement on.
Information knowing why they want to.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, so it sounds like there will be ample notification and explanation, and we're still on the motion at hand, which is to set the public hearing date for the May 16th, 2019 City Council meeting, beginning at 6 PM. City staff will be here at 4:00. Did you make that, Councilmember Keisler?
I think I did, but you kind of reworded it and then we added to it.
Correct. So, yeah,
Let's do it again.
all right, go for
Okay.
it.
I make a motion to set a public hearing date of May 16, 2019 for consideration of protest with the, did you write it down?
To the proposed rate increases, and we already accepted the reports, with the advertising that's already in there.
Okay, with the advertising that's going to be sent out
April 15th.
April 15th.
I second the motion.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving to set the public hearing date for the 218 process as May 16, 2019, for the consideration of protest and to advertise by at least the April 15th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
I'm so proud of you guys. What a team. We're getting there, man. This is cool.
Slowly but surely.
This
All
is
right.
cool. I'll have the video ready, Julie.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to item 13F, which is the check register that was moved from the consent agenda. Councilmember Art, I believe you had a question on 2 checks related to the airport.
One is airport and one is to Clemens Waste Removal.
Okay.
There is a check that we all signed on March the 15th. Clemens Waste Removal, $1,468.05. And the check description is 3 months past due, short, and I assume the word is contract. What's going on there?
Yeah, its simplest one sentence term is it was a shortened, we owed them more money. More clarification? The contract, we have an Excel spreadsheet with the changeover. It was the old dollar figure that we pay, so we have a monthly or yearly contract divided into 12. So on that spreadsheet, then there's other things on the spreadsheet, but that monthly amount was the old spreadsheet and it didn't get updated to the new spreadsheet, to the new number with the CPI increase. So we shorted them this much money.
So this happened, to be correct, January, February, March, we caught it.
We finally rectified.
It was a yearly thing?
Yes.
It changed the first year.
It changed July 1. We were paying them correctly July, August, September, October, November, I think. And then with the changeover of the financial technician, the Excel spreadsheet was an old spread.
So you finally caught it.
January, February, March was the old rate.
Okay.
So we had to revert back to the original amount.
Was there a penalty involved?
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Item 2, Steve Pierce Handyman, snow removal mod. $1,650. What was that?
Yeah, that was, I had a request from our Public Works Supervisor, Bill Willman. With all the snow that we had up there at the airport, the city hangars were getting a large load of snow in between the hangars, and he was concerned that that snow was going to actually start to collapse the walls of the city hangars. We have in the budget for the airport that's been approved for building maintenance and grounds, $2,500. So I had Bill check with our finance director to find out exactly where we were at in that account, in that fund, and said you can spend up to that amount, but not over, if needed. So we started to get some more heavy snow up there, and he called to have this person get up there and stay within our budget amount to clear that, to protect the structures.
My understanding is that snow removal or plowing does get reimbursed by the state, so this can be included in that reimbursement?
I believe so.
Cool.
Yeah. A portion of that, I think it's 50%.
Yeah, so okay.
On another note, this councilman appreciates Mr. Steve Pierce. He does a lot for this city. He gets places that some of our equipment can't go. He always picks up the phone. He comes. We're fortunate to have him. And I thank him for his fortitude in helping Dunsmuir out. The guy's out there in the snow and the storm. He's a trooper, so we're lucky to have somebody to step up to the plate like that. And we're still in the budget.
Well, I have no issue with Mr. Pierce.
Again, questions right now, and then we'll go to public comment and then discussion.
Well,
Just remember.
in the short term, with the airport fund in deficit, I assume the money to pay the check comes out of the general fund.
No, the money comes out of the airport enterprise. The enterprise is in deficit, you're correct. So what's been happening is this due from. The airport still owes the general fund the money, and it has assets to back those securities as well. So it's correct that the airport fund is in a deficit this year, and that the general fund at the end of the year will have to make sure that it has the backing to secure that. But the airport enterprise does have securities to make sure that it as an enterprise can pay those back. So it has assets as well.
We discussed it in one of our first meetings, Peter, with the auditor's report. That ultimately, if we sold off all the assets of the airport, we'd still be in a one-time positive gain.
Well, and both of us are in the real estate business, and the differences between the value of an asset and the immediate cash flow.
Yes.
The airport is not cash flowing, and to the extent it's not, every dollar out of the general fund that could go to keeping the pool open or fixing the sidewalks,
So again, we're at questions.
go into the general fund. Thank you.
I'm going to now open this up for public comment since we are going into discussion. Is there any public comment related to the check register? Seeing none, we will now close public comment, and you may now resume if you would like.
Sir, done.
Okay.
I move the check register.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve the check register. Is there a
I'll second that.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the check register, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. That is it for new business, correct? Nothing else? Okay. So we will now move into announcements and reports from council and staff. Thank you for putting this to the end. I'm going to start with Councilmember Keisler. I will move in that direction, and then we'll come back around.
Okay. The pool ain't closing. They're going to fix it. My understanding is next year we're going to get a new liner, but the pool's not closing. We are entertaining, we need volunteers, we need lifeguards. And I'm working on an idea. I'm thinking that Dunsmuir could have a lifeguard academy here. People who come here and get trained. I've spoken with the Rotary, which I'm very proud to be part of. My Rotary is entertaining the idea that if it costs them $200 to get trained be a lifeguard, well, if you get your training and you serve a summer here in Dunsmuir, we'll give you $100 back on your training. And if you serve that second summer here, then we'll give you back all the money that you paid for your training. So basically, you get free training, you serve 2 years in Dunsmuir, and then you have the experience to go anywhere you wanted to go. Hopefully you stick around here. So I'm personally doing a request. I need people, we need volunteers, we need lifeguards. You guys talk to me, I got pretty much pulled over and pulled out of my car by an adult that was upset that his kid couldn't swim. My response to him was, be a lifeguard. If you want your kids to swim, I need lifeguards. So there's that. Another thing, the Rotary on April 13th is having a golf tournament. We are seeking prizes for raffles. We're also, if you'd like to have a sign put up for your business, it's $50. If you'd like to play, it's $75 to play. 4 people make a team. All this money goes to our backpack program for our elementary school and for our scholarship program for the high school. Sometimes the way out is a hand up. So this program is really great. Get a hold of any Rotarians and we can tell you how to get involved in that. Lastly, I met a couple ladies the other day. Well, actually, I got 2 things. I met a couple ladies the other day, yesterday, and me and Mark Brannigan went in and talked to them. They're the Healthy Siskiyou Mobile Unit. It's a couple of ladies. They come here the first and third Wednesday of the month from 10 to 3 p.m. They have everything that you might need. Do you want a toothbrush? Do you want a cell phone with bigger numbers because you can't hear or you can't see? Do you need information on how to get food? How to ride the bus? Do you need to trade in your dirty needles? Do you need condoms? Whatever it is, these people are here to help us. I'm excited. I know that a lot of people can use some of these things that these people have to offer. Ed Valenzuela came to a meeting this morning with the professionals group, and he told me, I was bragging about this, and he said, Big Dave, I don't mean to throw a little water on your fire, but it's not really working that good because people don't know about it. People don't know about it because people ain't talking about it. I'm telling you about it. This is a great thing. We need to take advantage of it, and we're going to put them up here. They'll be out here by the City Hall, or they might be up at the community building parking lot to service North Dunsmuir. We're trying to get them out there, and they're willing to help us. They've got all kind of information, so I cordially, we're going to put this up on the city website so you can see the times. This is a good thing, and I commend them, the county, for putting this thing together, and I look forward to them servicing our community. Lastly, some great news. Ed Valenzuela this morning at his professional meetings, there were some of us that were present. He said that the county's looking into a green waste program.
Don't steal my thunder.
Oh, really?
Don't steal my thunder.
Oh, okay, never mind. Didn't say that. Saw you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just going to do green waste really quick. So yeah, so similar thing. One, Ed Valenzuela and the County Board of Supervisors is working on a specific free green waste drop-off day or highly reduced. They haven't decided yet. I think right now it's like $5 a bin of green waste up at the Blackview transfer station. I think they're going to reduce it down to like $5 per truckload, which is a significant reduction, and that'll be county-wide. In addition to that, though, I'm going to be meeting with Arthur Boyd, who's the recycling coordinator for the county, tomorrow with Supervisor Valenzuela, and discussing if there's an ability for South Siskiyou to also have a reduced rate day just for citizens of Dunsmuir, and talking about how we can facilitate that, either having it highly reduced or doing something with that, where the city council could do a budget appropriation to try and see that. We're working on a couple of different ways to make it flow really well, because if you know anything about our Earth Day free day, everybody takes advantage of it. I sat in line for 2.5 hours one year for Blackview. So we're trying to do a couple of days. In addition to that, there is a grant that I've been starting for the city of Dunsmuir. That's through the state for about $5,000 to do an additional Greenways Day. So that grant will be due in the next 2 weeks. It's a kind of a short one, so it's pretty easy for me to put together for us. So hopefully there will be a multitude of Greenways Days. We're also going to talk about this at the Disaster Planning Advisory Committee about trying to coordinate how we're going to get this and get their input, as well as what's the best way to get people from Dunsmuir up there, because we know some people may not have trucks to be able to do that. So we're going to have that conversation of seeing if anyone can volunteer some trucks and go up there. So we are extensively working on it, and we will have some multiple either free or reduced Greenways Days.
Sweet. I got one more thing if I could. Let's talk about burning. There's been a lot of complaints about people burning and people smoking. I'm burning in my house. My homeowner's insurance told me that this and this gotta go, or you gotta go. Well, I ain't going anywhere. So the trees had to go, the fence had to go, I've been burning. And I had an environmental dude come into my backyard and he checked what I was burning. So a heads up, people, he's around. Don't burn trash. Don't burn like railroad ties that got oil. Don't burn plastic, you'll get a ticket. As of May 1st, you need a permit to burn. These are things that you need to be aware of. That's the paper he gave me.
Not in the city of Dunsmuir. Mr. Fire Chief has to collect that.
Oh, okay. There you go. Mom said so. So, but just be careful, because if you're out there burning and you're creating a lot of smoke, the dude's going to come around. If you're burning something that's not appropriate, the only thing that you can burn is yard debris or wood from taking down a fence or something like that.
That isn't treated with any type of paint or stuff like that.
Exactly.
Don't burn it.
Don't burn that. So just be aware that if you are going to burn, make sure you're burning stuff right, because the dude's out there trying to catch you and bust you and give you a ticket.
And please call in for if it is a burn day or not, because that's another very, very fancy 4-digit ticket. We will. Yep.
8123.
Oh,
Alright.
just-
That phone number is available on the city's website, I believe, or you can at least call in. We have that phone number. Please make sure you call in and see if it's a burn day.
Let's make it easy. What was it, please?
842.
842
8123.
8123. That's the bird number.
Every day.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan, any announcements, comments?
I think we've covered it all.
Okay, cool. Councilmember Deutsch?
There is an event going on, a fundraiser for the Siskiyou County Community Resource Collaborative, which I'm on board of. It's Clint and Isla who do the impersonations and Elvis, exactly. And it's going to be at the Wairika Community Center on April 5th. Tickets are, I believe, $25 a person and $35 for a couple, $5 for kids. And this is going towards raising money for the various community resource centers. The collaborative has 5 different centers that they work and manage, including Dunsmuir's. So if you like that music, you'll be coming. I can get you tickets, and that's all on that. I am looking at coming up with a volunteer fair sometime in mid-May, with the idea in mind that we have all kinds of events coming up this year. We've got the same people that have done it for the last 5-10 years, and we're trying to find a way to bring new people in. So we'll be working with Rotary and perhaps the Ford Family Institute to come up with some funds to be able to put something on. And at the same time, we figure we can also get more sign-ups for Neighborhood Watch. So imagining having it down at the ball field and having everybody show up to do all of that. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Art, announcements, comments?
Well,
Yes. It's your turn.
I'm a big supporter of Rotary and of their efforts to help feed the community through the backpack program. So on behalf of Bombs Away LLC, I'm happy to pay the green fees if the city council wants to put together a foursome. I've not had a golf club in my hand for 30 years. I know Big Dave plays all the time.
I have never played, and I am
Oh, baloney.
Hey,
not
actually,
a coordinated individual.
Also never mind.
actually, I don't know why I'm saying this, but,
But I'm willing to try.
There you
I'll
go.
drive the golf cart.
There you go.
I'm not allowed to hold a golf club. The judge said so.
There you go.
But I drive the golf course.
Yeah. They did, and I'll have some drag.
I'm honest.
Parking lot while you.
Anyway, I think it would be
First one I've heard.
Brown Act. I think it would be a team building opportunity to support.
I look forward to it. Love it.
Okay.
The second item is Big Dave's comments are not the first I've heard from residents of Dunsmuir that are homeowners and property owners, that their property insurers are threatening them with cancellation
Yeah.
if their property is not fire safe. And in some instances, they say, we're just dropping you.
Correct.
You're not safe. In other instances, you need to do this and this and this. So I'm very happy with the discussion tonight that we're starting to grab hold of the need on a neighborhood watch basis, on a fire safe basis, community, neighborhood by neighborhood. We need to do this. One of my friends in Dunsmuir oversees a resident of the community that's gotten in trouble with the sheriff's department, and he faces a choice of either a fine or incarceration or doing community service. And we're working on an approach where he's going to do community service, and he's perfectly happy to go to, say, a senior citizen or someone on a fixed income. I think as we meet next week, we need to put together the green waste repository with the processing, with the notion, is there a resource coming out of Wairika where we could get a community service type roster of those who would be willing to trade time for cutting branches?
Maybe that's a discussion, you can bring that to the meeting next week.
Oh, I'll be bringing that back. That's a great one. I'm going to be bringing that to you, bro. That's a good one.
The last item,
Sergeant Bro. That's a good one.
the last item is, if this is the right time to do it, I am remaining frustrated about getting code enforcement on our agenda. I would like to propose and hope at our next meeting we could talk about a public workshop. The way former Mayor Keisler set it up, where we had members of the Planning Commission and the City Council, not a 3-minute thing, but a workshop.
Joint.
I would like to move in relation to that, if you mean code enforcement, a review of our current codes and ordinances relating to those. So I think that'd probably be a good first step, because when we have someone to enforce these codes, if they're not up to date and don't reflect the values and current needs of the city, we'll be paying a lot of resources by just restructuring. And I think it'd be healthy to take a look at that right now, because we're here and we're able to.
Any agenda items, welcome, if that finds favor with the council. And of course, buried in that is nothing makes any difference if we don't hire a code enforcement officer and or animal control officer. The next issue is our city needs to be FEMA compliant. I think achieving FEMA compliance for reimbursement should stay on our agenda until we get it done, or we're confident we will get it done before the fire season is out. We've already talked about the community pool, and I'm very happy that Big Dave's report is good, because I'm one of the supporters of the Pool Bucks program. It's a vital resource. The Finance Committee is going to be on the next agenda. And the last item is where we are with the city manager, and are we going to try to have an interim city manager, or are we going to run without management? And we don't need to talk about it now, but I very much disfavor with no manager whatsoever.
Correct.
Thank you.
So just to touch on that very quickly, Councilmember Deutsch and I will be meeting next week to discuss an interim, at least for when Mark leaves us before someone else takes the position. So we are going to be putting that together and then putting a proposal together for the full council to consider. So we are going to be working on that next week. As far as the pool to add to it, I have also had a discussion with Mike Rodriguez in the park, and he will be putting together for an item for the finance committee to consider as far as contributions related to the TUT and related to longevity. So I told him to start with you two as far as addressing that and things that need to go there. Going back to the FEMA certification, that's part of our local hazard mitigation plan. The one nice thing we do have already in place that we can't forget about is our community wildfire protection plan that Julie Titus put together a couple of years back is in compliance and does make us eligible for Cal OES funds.
But
So-
not FEMA.
But not FEMA.
Correct.
But FEMA apparently doesn't want to give California money anyway. Anyway, Cal OES does have a number of items coming up, and so we'll be talking about that at DPAC when they become available. I've been watching the timelines for that. So even if we can't get FEMA right now until our LHMP is done, local hazard mitigation plan, we can use Cal OES and a couple of other creative funds for that. So it's on the radar, and we're making sure we're doing that. The only thing I have to add is I went to the solid waste meeting yesterday at the county. Pretty disheartening. Those meetings typically are. China is not taking our recyclables anymore, and so Wairika Transfer is going to be closing 3 recycling stations, one in Weed, one in Fort Jones, and I can't remember what the other one is. So it's a very difficult situation that we're in. We had a very long conversation. Clemens was at the table, a number of other haulers were at the table, and it's basically everyone is not able to make these things pencil out. Cal Recycle had 2 representatives there from the state for our region, and they talked about that the state understands that there's no regional markets for recycling, so they're trying to put incentives into developing regional recycling facilities. We're working with them on that and what that looks like. They're also hopefully, they didn't guarantee, but hopefully they're looking into funding mechanism for composting and green waste programs so that we can start meeting those mandates. And then we spent about half an hour talking about all of the new mandates that we get to do, that we don't get any funding for. So, but the good thing is the one big one, we actually we would not have to comply until 2032. So they gave us more than a 5-year deferment for a couple of those. If you would like a full list of all of the regulations that are going to be applying, I can give those to you, but for the most part, our region specifically, not just our jurisdiction, and Shasta County as well, so Reading's even having a problem with this, is everybody is struggling to offer solid waste services in the recycling and composting and green waste area. Everyone has an issue. We are trying really hard to do that. The Siskiyou Economic Development Council, who was here, was also at that meeting and did approach Cal Recycle about putting in more effort on the economic development side to bring a regional composting and green waste facility to South County.
Right on.
So we have another player at the table, hopefully trying to look at that as an economic development thing for us. So everyone's looking at it, everyone is struggling. Like I said, we are going to be offering those, I call them quick relief green days because it's not a long-term solution, but it will at least get us through this season dealing with that green waste issue. Moving forward though, it was really nice to hear from Cal Recycle that they have been doing on-site audits of all of the cities. So if you didn't know, Dunsmuir got audited, Mount Shasta got audited, everyone's doing really well. They were very surprised by the things that we all talked about that we all just do on our daily basis, like at-home composting, recycling pallets. That all counts towards our Cal Recycle numbers and makes us look better, like we're doing a better job. So we're actually doing better than we think because we just kind of do it already. Like reusing eggshells in your garden apparently counts as things you can leverage for funding. So what they're actually going to be doing is, this coming summer, they're going to be spending more time, the 2 representatives from Cal Recycle, and they'll be doing a public forum in all of the cities to just kind of talk about what are the cities doing currently, related anything and everything related to solid waste, composting, and taking some input from there and offering suggestions and support for communities that want to get better. So they'll also be coming here to help us overall with our solid waste. So that includes recycling and upcycling and any of the other cyclings. So we're working on it. They're going to be coming back. They're actually very impressed with how we've all been doing, surprisingly. Like I said, sometimes we see our services go away and don't realize we're still doing, our best and doing a lot better than other places. So they'll be coming back up. Other than that, the only thing I can say about code enforcement is I've been trying to work on the animal control officer side and looking at our ordinances and seeing what needs to change there, and looking at that fee structure to make the code enforcement and animal control officer work on a long-term basis. So hopefully we'll be able to start talking about those in the next coming meetings.
A question, speaking of Mount Shasta, I've noticed they were looking for a part-time person too for that, weren't they?
Thank you. 50%.
So they have what's called a community services officer. And I'm going to be very diplomatic.
There she goes being diplomatic again.
They do a lot less code enforcement and a lot more live scans. So, they've had the position for a while. The individual who's in that position now will be retiring at the end of April. So the police department has had that in their budget for a while. So it is divided between animal control, code enforcement, parking enforcement, and administrative duties. As someone who writes code and would like their codes enforced, it's not an ideal situation. So.
But other than say nothing yet.
It is. But anyway, there are a number of things, and I'm taking a look at that. And the nice thing is there are some changes we can make to our code enforcement ordinances. So I'm hoping that'll be coming up here pretty soon. Also, to let everybody know, Councilmember Bryan and I have agreed on a draft protocol, and we'll be bringing that to you at the next meeting.
Yeehaw.
You're welcome. Anything else for the good of the order?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Staff comments.
We have a holiday next Monday. I'll be off on Friday, and Julie will be gone Thursday and Friday. So for next council meeting, we're going to need any agenda items by Wednesday.
Of next week.
So we can post by Thursday at the latest.
Okay, we'll make sure that those are in. I will be on vacation next week, so I will definitely check in with you to just review what's going to be on there to make sure that it's timely and we're not here forever. And that we're getting things addressed. Okay.
Do I need to resubmit or am I good?
No, I have your email.
Thank you.
And we will go through. All right. Anything to add? I know we have your report here.
Yes. Good evening. I was just going to report on the February statistics very quick and then draw our attention to a news release that came out. So for the month of February, the total Dunsmuir patrol hours by the Sheriff's Office was 649. Total calls, including self-initiated activity, for February was 137. We pulled 13 cases, 17 traffic-related stops, 12 citations, 5 arrests, which 3 were felonies and 2 were misdemeanors. Some of the details on the arrests, one of them was the burglary search warrant incident that we did on Dunsmuir Avenue here a few weeks ago, where we recovered a bunch of the property and booked the suspect on burglary and possession of stolen property. We had a felony warrant arrest that also yielded a marble size ball of heroin and a golf ball size of methamphetamine.
Which is a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, it was a pretty good pinch. Those quantities suggest it's possession for sale, and I think we were able to articulate that, which bumps it up to a felony violation rather than just a misdemeanor possession charge. We did have a felony domestic violence arrest on Verney Street. We had a misdemeanor drug paraphernalia arrest on Florence Loop, and then a public intoxication arrest on Castle Avenue. We did not have any burglaries for the month of February. did have 6 petty thefts that occurred on Pioneer Street, 6th Avenue, Allen Street, Dunsmuir Boulevard, Florence Loop, and Shear Avenue. Just like to remind the members of the public, make sure that you are securing your vehicles, your houses, and just the perspective should be that if it's not nailed down or secured, it's going to get stolen. So, did not have any assault and batteries, no vandalisms, had 4 trespassing incidents, and we had a bunch of disturbing the peace calls, which is normal. So any questions on that before I draw attention to?
Where was that filling meth and amphetamine?
Chevron.
At the Chevron?
We located, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Where was that?
Oh, yes, it was, we found this person at Chevron. One of our deputies recognized the subject, who was a female, as having a subject who had a felony warrant for arrest. So when we arrested her, we found all that stuff on her. So any other questions before I move on real quick?
All right.
No? Okay, so I just want to draw our attention real quick to the news release that came out by the Siskiyou County Office of Emergency Services. Many of you probably had a call from the, it was regarding the countywide code red testing. You guys probably got a call on that. That happened yesterday. I have made about 20 copies of this news release. The reason why it's still relevant now is because it has the websites in which to register your phone number for the code red alerts during an emergency. And I'd just like to read the last couple lines of the news release. It says, Siskiyou County OES reminds everyone to actively participate in emergency preparedness by remaining informed. Safety is a two-way street. To be sure to register today to receive the information you need. Don't wait for an emergency to register your phone number. So if anybody needs a copy of that, I do have several of them here.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
Well,
Is it something that you can ask after, or do you want to?
and just because all of us studied the fire in Paradise, and as I understand, that county had a code red system as well. Rural, some people were connected, some people weren't. Will we have a designated contact in the sheriff's department as our committee moves forward? Because we're all going to be working as citizens on making sure everybody has adequate time. And we're getting wired up for broadband, that's pretty good. Our communication infrastructure is improving. But if the worst happens and we have a fire this summer, for those that are sort of off the grid but in the jurisdiction, how do we get a hold of them?
Are you talking about how you get a hold of a sheriff's office official, or?
No. So that if we are in an emergency situation, FEMA approved or not, we have a plan that improves on what happened in Paradise to make sure everybody gets timely warning that a natural disaster is about to occur and what they need to do. It worked perfectly for me. I'm in downtown Boston.
Right.
I got the code red thing, I got it on the radio, but that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
So do they pre-register with the city and the sheriff's office?
It's handled through the Siskiyou County Office of Emergency Services, and this news release has the deputy director, who is Jason Bella. He's the one, if there was to be an emergency, he was the one who would be getting contact and be quickly involved. So he'd also mentioned in the press release here that if there's any questions about how to register, then you can call him. His number is listed on this. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question or not, but he's the one who's going to be organizing this code red effort and alerts and notifications.
So again, the goal of the committee is to update the preparedness, have it on the website, and have all those things explained out. So it's going to get dealt with.
That's one of my deliverables.
Okay.
Is whether you're on the website, you can go to the city, you go to the sheriff's office.
We'll have a number of different things, and we'll talk about it next.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Go home, make a
All
motion,
right.
let's adjourn.
All right, all those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome to the after party.